Hello, everybody. I am Arshad Nadeem Khan, PGT English from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Dhana. In the past two videos, we have discussed the problem of the indigo sharecroppers, the conflict between the British landlords and the sharecropping tenants, how Gandhiji arrived in Champaran, how he was received by a vast multitudes of people in Motihari, what happened in the court, and how the case was dropped by the Lieutenant Governor of the province, the setting up of the commission to inquire into the grievances of the sharecroppers, and also the resolution of the problem. Today, we will study the remaining part of the chapter. The commission suggested that part of the compensation that the peasants paid to the British landlords should be returned. The British landlords did not want to return the entire amount. Gandhiji suggested that they should return only 50%. They did not agree even to that. They wanted a deadlock situation so that no solution comes out of it. But Gandhiji agreed to their offer to refund to the extent of 25%, thus breaking the deadlock. This settlement was adopted unanimously by the commission. Gandhi explained that the amount of the refund was less important than the fact that the landlords had been obliged to surrender part of the money and with it part of their prestige. Therefore, as far as the peasants were concerned, the planters had behaved as lords above law. Now the peasants saw that he had rights and defenders. He learned courage. So the settlement that the British landlords would return only 25% of the amount paid to them as compensation was adopted unanimously. Everybody agreed to it. Unanimously means everybody, all the parties, all the stakeholders agreed to it. Now there was a question, why did Gandhiji agree to the 25% settlement? Gandhiji explained that the amount of the refund was less important than the fact that the landlords had been obliged to surrender part of the money, but more importantly, with it, part of their prestige. This was important because on previous occasions there had been conflicts, there had been problems, and in all the cases, the British had never been able have had never been forced to surrender their prestige, but for the first time, with the money they were surrendering, they also had to surrender their prestige. Therefore, as far as the peasants were concerned, the planters, the landlords, had behaved as lords above the law. Now the peasant saw that he had rights and defenders. He learned courage. So this was more important, that they had the confidence, they learned the confidence that nobody was above the law, that anybody who does wrong could be brought under the ambit of law, could be punished, and that justice could be achieved. They learned this. They also learned that they had defenders. Law was their defender, and they learned courage. And if you remember that line, the mighty British Empire hitherto dreaded and unquestioned, it could now be questioned. It could also be brought under the ambit of law, and if they had done something wrong, that wrong could be undone now. So this was an important achievement. Events justified Gandhi's position. Within a few years, the British planters abandoned their estates. This happened because of the lost prestige. All these years, they used to behave like lords above the law. But because of this Indigo episode, they lost their prestige, they lost their honor, and they lost their confidence also. So they abandoned their estates, which reverted to the peasants. Indigo sharecropping disappeared. So all these years, sharecropping arrangement was going on. This disappeared. Now the indigo sharecroppers, first of all, they were no longer sharecroppers. Now they became the owners of the land. Sharecropping disappeared. Gandhi never contented himself with large political or economic solutions. He saw the cultural and social backwardness in the Champaran villages and wanted to do something about it immediately. He appealed for teachers, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parikh, two young men who had just joined Gandhi as disciples, and their wives volunteered for the work. Several more came from Bombay, Pune, and other distant parts of the land. Devdas, Gandhi's youngest son, arrived from the ashram, and so did Mrs. Gandhi. Primary schools were opened in 6 villages. Kasturbai taught the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. So this was Gandhiji's style. He was never contented. He was never content with large political or economic solutions. He always wanted to uplift people. He wanted to emancipate them. He wanted that they should come out of their backwardness, especially cultural and social backwardness. So when he was there in Champaran, and when he visited people, when he saw their condition, he was very disappointed, and he wanted to do something about it immediately, not after the battle against the landlords is over, but the struggle against the landlords was going on simultaneously with other works such as opening of schools, teaching of young kids, children, and also women about cleanliness and community sanitation. And as you know, on Gandhiji's call, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parikh, they came from Gujarat, and then there were other volunteers who came from Bombay, Pune, and other distant parts of the land. Health conditions were miserable. Gandhi got a doctor to volunteer his services for 6 months. 3 medicines were available at that time: castor oil, quinine, and sulfur ointment. Anybody who showed a coated tongue was given a dose of castor oil. Anybody with malaria fever received quinine plus castor oil. Anybody with skin eruptions received ointment plus castor oil. So you see that Gandhiji was working on people's health conditions also. And as the author points out here, that their health conditions were miserable. Gandhiji got a doctor to volunteer. You see, Champaran, suddenly so much was happening there. And the people of Champaran, the peasants of Champaran, had been so lucky that Gandhiji arrived in their district, Gandhiji visited their villages, and so much change occurred. One man was making so many changes. Gandhi noticed the filthy state of women's clothes. He asked Kasturbai to talk to them about it. One woman took Kasturbai into her hut and said, "Look, there is no box or cupboard here for clothes. The sari I am wearing is the only one I have." Can you see that? This speaks volumes about their conditions. "Look, there is no box or cupboard here for clothes. The sari I am wearing is the only one I have." The poverty was at its peak. People did not have clothes to wear. During his long stay in Champaran, Gandhi kept a long distance watch on the ashram as well. He sent regular instructions by mail and asked for financial accounts. Once he wrote to the residents that it was time to fill in the old latrine trenches and dig new ones, otherwise, the old ones would begin to smell bad. Look at the level of his concerns. He was concerned about everything, and he used to pay attention to even the most petty issues, like the digging up of new trenches. And so he was worried about everything. He was involved in everything, all the aspects of the ashram. The Champaran episode was a turning point in Gandhi's life. What I did, Gandhi explained, was a very ordinary thing. I declared that the British could not order me about in my own country. This was a turning point, Gandhi says. And he did a very small thing. He refused to obey, and this became the mantra for the struggle against the British. Civil disobedience. Gandhi explained, what I did was a very ordinary thing. I declared that British could not order me about in my own country. But Champaran did not begin as an act of defiance. Yes, we all know that when Gandhiji arrived in Champaran, he had no idea what he would do there. He had not gone there to defy the British authorities or defy the British orders. It grew out of an attempt to alleviate the distress of large number of poor peasants. So distress means miseries. Distress means the poor condition. So the basic objective of Gandhiji was to alleviate the people, to uplift them, to bring them out of their misery. He was trying to do that. And in the process, he had to defy the British, and he encouraged the sharecroppers, the peasants, to defy the British as well. And so it became an act of defiance. The purpose was not to defy anybody, the purpose was to alleviate the poor peasants from their distress. This was the typical Gandhi pattern. His politics were intertwined with the practical day to day problems of the millions. The politics was not done in isolation. Politics is part of life. So if somebody focuses only on politics and leaves the life behind, then the politics is of no use. Gandhiji's politics were intertwined, it were mixed with the practical day to day problems of the millions. His was not a loyalty to abstractions, it was a loyalty to living human beings. Gandhiji was not loyal only to the ideas or principles of politics, principles of democracy. this, that. His loyalty was not to abstractions. Gandhiji did not worry so much about the ideas. He did not worry so much about the principles. He was worried about human beings. And this is what um, defined his politics. He wanted to alleviate the poor people. He wanted to help people. He wanted to bring change in their lives. And for it, whatever was possible, Gandhiji did. This was his politics. In everything Gandhiji did, moreover, he tried to mold a new free Indian who could stand on his own feet and thus make India free. Self reliance, self dependence. This is what Gandhiji believed in. He believed that one person could not bring about change. You might have heard his famous quote, be the change you want to see in the world. So, if India was to become independent, India was to become free from the clutches of the British, one person, Gandhi, could not do anything. Or Subhash Chandra Bose, or Jawaharlal Nehru, or Khudiram Bose, or Bhagat Singh. Individuals could do nothing. The entire nation should come together. And this would be possible when individuals are free from fear, number one. Number two, when they are self dependent, self reliant. Only then they could be of use to others. If they are dependent on others, how could they be of any use to the nation? So Gandhiji believed in self reliance. And everything Gandhiji did, he tried to mold a new free Indian. He wanted to mold young men, young women, old and young, into a free Indian who could stand on his own feet and thus make India free. Early in the Champaran action, this is also very interesting and very important, dear students, please pay attention. Early in the Champaran action, Charles Friar Andrews, the English pacifist who had come who had become a devoted follower of the Mahatma, came to bid Gandhiji farewell before going on a tour of duty to the Fiji Islands. First of all, who was Charles Friar of Andrews? He was the English pacifist. He was a British national. He had become a devoted follower of Gandhiji. He was a pacifist. Pacifist is one who is against war, who is all for peaceful methods. And he had seen that Gandhi was the champion of peace. Gandhi is also against all kinds of aggression, all kinds of war. He was the advocate of non-violence. He had become a follower of Gandhiji, so he came to meet Gandhiji in Champaran because he was going to Fiji. Gandhiji's lawyer friends thought it would be a good idea for Andrews to stay in Champaran and help them. Andrews was willing if Gandhiji agreed, but Gandhi was vehemently opposed. You see, Gandhiji did not want to take help of his English friend. Gandhi said, you think that in this unequal fight it would be helpful if we have an Englishman on our side? This shows the weakness of your heart. The cause is just, and you must rely upon yourself to win the battle. You should not seek a prop in Mr. Andrews because he happens to be an Englishman. Self reliance, believe in yourself. Don't think if you have an Englishman on your side, you will do well or you will win. Gandhi said that this shows your weakness to think that if an Englishman is on your side, then you will be strong. This shows our weakness, the weakness of our mind. The cause is just. The fight uh, is unequal, of course. The British are very powerful and the Indian peasants are very weak. But the cause for the fight is just. They have done wrong. We are right. This is a just cause to fight. We are fighting against the wrong. And you must rely upon yourself to win the battle because you are on the side of the truth. You are seeking justice, and your opponent is on the side of the wrong. He has done wrong, he has been unjust. Because the cause of a fight is just, we should not depend on others, we should not depend on anybody. We should not seek a prop in Mr. Andrews. Prop, you understand? An aid, a help. Mr. Andrews should not be used as an aid. He had read our minds correctly, Rajan Prasad comments, and we had no reply. Actually, Rajan Prasad and all the other lawyers at that time they were all thinking like this, that Mr. Andrews is an Englishman. If he is on our side, then it would be a great help, and we will have the moral courage, the moral support. Gandhiji read their minds, and he scolded them and he explained to them that this is not correct. This is the weakness of your mind. If you're right, then you should not depend on others for anybody's support. If you're right, if you're on the side of the truth, courage will automatically come to you. You will be strong. So Rajendra Prasad comments, he had read our minds correctly and we had no reply. Gandhi, in this way, taught us a lesson in self reliance. Self reliance, Indian independence, and help to sharecroppers were all bound together. So, dear students, sometimes you might wonder why so much of credit for India's independence is given to Mahatma Gandhi. It's because of this that he molded a new free Indian, and so he actually built an independent free India. It was no longer ready to be under the subjugation of the British, and so he developed an uprising against the British. He developed civil disobedience against the British, and whatever he did, he made sure that the Indians would become strong, they would become courageous, they would become self reliant, and they would become free of fear. So, help of the poor, Indian independence, and self reliance, they were all bound together, they were all related to each other. Thank you very much. With this, we come to the end of the chapter. At the end of the chapter, we should do some exercises also. There are some questions given for you to work upon understanding the text. Why do you think Gandhi considered the Champaran episode to be a turning point in his life? How was Gandhi able to influence lawyers? Give instances. What was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities towards advocates of home rule? How do we know that ordinary people too contributed to the freedom movement? And then, talking about the text, discuss the following. Freedom from fear is more important than legal justice for the poor. Do you think that the poor of India are free from fear after independence? What are the qualities of a good leader? So, I wish you all the best. I hope that you will go through these questions, you will contemplate on these questions and find answers. And I hope that these three lectures that I have presented would be of some use to you. Thank you very much.